What is going on, Chum Guzzlers? Welcome back to Bucket of Chum, the Shark Movie Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Captain Steve, and this week we're trading in the high seas for the deep snow as we check out Snow Shark, Ancient Snow Beast from 2011, directed by Sam Qualiana. Now, Sam Qualiana is the director of Post Apocalyptic Commando Shark. Let me say that again, Post Apocalyptic Commando Shark, which I did a review on. I think it was either last year or the year before. I think I may have done it during my first year, but it is a completely bonkers and nonsensical movie. I loved every minute of it, and I'm hoping that we can get some more of that ridiculous energy in this movie as well. So this film actually started off as a short film, surprisingly, and it was something the director and his friends filmed when they were younger, like back in 2004, and it actually takes place before this movie. So I haven't checked that out yet, but hopefully at some point I'll check that out. I might even start doing some reviews on like short films and whatnot. So maybe I'll add that one to the list and let you guys know how that one is. But for now, let's get into the Letterboxd plot synopsis. Frozen in the ice for thousands of years, the beast has finally awoken. 12 years ago, during a scientific expedition, 3 animal biologists stumbled upon a great discovery that ended in tragedy. Whatever killed them was awoken, and now the legend of the ancient snow beast could prove to be more than just a legend. Now, this has an average rating of 2.5 stars on Letterboxd, which is actually a little bit higher than I thought it would be, to be perfectly honest, but let's get into our poster expectations. There's a couple different posters for this movie. There usually are for most movies, obviously, but the one on Letterboxd reminds me of seeing low-budget unknown movies in like the Walmart like discount bin in like 2011 or between like 2007 2011, like right around that era. And then the other poster looks like something you would see on Tubi. Either way, it looks super low budget. That's not always a bad thing. We like low budget movies here, so I'm just setting expectations for everybody. I don't expect we'll see a whole lot of gore, maybe not a whole lot of practical effects. I'm kind of expecting to see a lot of dodgy CGI, maybe, but no middle ground between like dodgy CGI and practical effects. But I guess either way, this could be totally practical or just like totally terrible 2011 CGI. But before we go any further, if you like the podcast and you would like to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/bucket of chum. This month, we are checking out Lobsteroids from 1989. I had a blast watching that movie. That review should be coming out soon. But yeah, if you want to support the podcast, that's a great way to do it. If you can't do that, you can also leave a 5-star rating or a review of the podcast, because that really helps it out. And don't forget, you can follow me on all the social medias. That's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that at Bucket of Chum Podcast. But now there's nothing else left to do other than to unleash my own ancient snow beast, and let's dive in. And just to be clear, the ancient snow beast is my penis. So the movie starts off, we have these 3 hikers going through the forest, and they're setting up a camp. And now these 3 are here to investigate why, after an earthquake, all of the wildlife in the forest has started to disappear or die or something like that. So 2 of them break off to go and explore, and they find like just piles of blood in the snow, and they note that this blood trail seems to go like back into the ground somehow. I'm not quite sure how they figured that part out, but I mean, they're scientists, so I'm just gonna have to take their word for it. And so they try to make sense of it, but can't, nor can I. And when this is happening, we get these really weird editing fades where they fade out completely to black and then just fade back into the picture. It kind of looks like when you're watching a made-for-TV movie and there's the very obvious commercial breaks. They do that a bunch in this movie, but it obviously wasn't made for TV, so I'm not sure why they're doing this. I feel like they wanted to fade between stuff, but instead they accidentally faded the audio and the picture together at the same time. But yeah, it's just nonsensical. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyways, they return to the camp, and this woman, Bianca, has disappeared, and so they start calling for her, but she's just wandered off a little bit. So they go and find her, and she's staring at some hole in the ground. And then after seeing this, they just immediately come to the conclusion, well, some ancient beast must have been in there, and the earthquake set it free. I mean, you're basing this off of looking at a hole in the ground, but sure, why not? Again, they're the scientists, not me. Now, the lead doctor, Dr. Hoffman, is excited for this, but the other two were like, no, we're scared because there could be like a big dinosaur running around out there. We don't know. And then we see this shark fin going through the snow. Now, every time we see a shark fin in this movie, it's a practical shark fin from what I can tell. So they just have like this shark fin dragging through the snow. Not gonna lie, it doesn't look half bad. For like, you, again, set your expectations pretty low. But I mean, I was like, hey, this is like a practical shark fin effect by the looks of it. And if it's not, then they actually did a half decent job blending this in with the CGI. But again, I'm pretty fucking sure that this is a practical shark fin shot. So the shark comes up, it kills one of the dudes, not Hoffman, whoever he was, I don't care. And then Bianca and Hoffman start running off into the forest, and then Bianca is dragged and killed off screen, and then Hoffman talks into a tape recorder and then says like, it's a shark, it's a snow shark. And then we assume here that he's killed because we don't really see anything except for his tape recorder just kind of fall to the ground. Then we get some credits rolling and we see some news articles about people missing or dying and all of that. One of the papers blames it on a rogue bear. Keep an eye on the Patreon this year because we might be talking about a rogue bear soon, maybe. I don't know. But anyways, it's 12 years later. We follow a couple into the woods. And the dude is like, oh my god, you know where we are, right? And the girl's like, yeah, where's your sense of adventure? And he goes to leave because he's like, I don't want any part of this. And when he turns back around to talk to her, she's disappeared. Suddenly she's gone. And there's just a pile of bloody snow that remains. And then we see the shark fin again. It swims up to him. And then we just cut to him like bleeding and then walking through the woods. And he ends up coming across like a hunter or something. And then the dude asks him like what was wrong. And then the dude dies saying like, oh, it was a snow shark or whatever. These are like people going to Jurassic Park. Like there's another Jurassic Park movie coming out. As of this episode, they just dropped a new Jurassic World trailer with ScarJo. Now listen, I'm a very big ScarJo fan. I'm not saying I particularly think she's a great actor. She's hot. There's not more to say than that. But I like seeing her in movies, but I am really not that excited about the new Jurassic World movie. I really want that franchise to just embrace how ridiculous those movies have gotten, because I still feel like they're trying to make a serious dinosaur movie every time they make one of these movies. And I'm like, no, just embrace the absurdity of it. That's what the Fast and Furious did. And again, those movies are awful, but I will watch every single one of them that comes out because they are just so absurd. So that's my little Jurassic Park / World rant. Why you needed to hear that? You didn't, but you heard it anyways. Then we go to the mayor's house, and he's still in his house coat, just getting a coffee from his wife. And then she's like, oh, someone's here to see you. And then this dude Campbell walks in. He's probably like the assistant mayor or something like that. And then him and the mayor's wife kind of exchange some like sexy looks for a little bit. Maybe they're trying to imply there's something going on there, but we don't really follow up on that in the rest of the movie. It's just there in this moment, and then that's it. That's all we see. Campbell tells the mayor that there was a couple of deaths in the forest, and he says that the man's last words were snow shark. So the mayor says to get the sheriff on the phone and notify him, and then Campbell argues with him and like that this is nonsense. Oh, this isn't happening. Well, why go to his house then? If you just think this is all bullshit, why even go to the mayor's house? Why, call him if it's not that big of a deal to you? After that, we go to a town meeting, and we just see, various people talking about, oh, what could it be? Oh, I think it's a bear. Oh, I think it's a shark. Blah, 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 blah. And the sheriff is answering questions, and this dude, Mike, speaks up and says, it was a snow shark. But the mayor and then the sheriff kind of argue with him, says it's not a snow shark. And then, basically, this is the Jaws town hall meeting, right? This is what they're trying to do here. And apparently Mike killed a snow shark before and showed everybody, but nobody believed him that he killed a snow shark. They just thought that he, brought in a shark from somewhere else and then showed it to everybody to try and claim it was a snow shark. I kind of feel like a snow shark's biology might be different than a regular shark, so I feel like if they cut it open, it should look different somehow, because it's living in snow and not water. I mean, that's just me. Again, I'm the crazy one here. But this is very much like avalanche sharks, which I also covered in year one, I believe. And that was a fantastic movie. I had a lot of fun with Avalanche Sharks, which is kind of a semi-sequel to Sand Sharks, also another fantastic movie. But this movie does have some things that kind of set it on its own from that movie, and I think actually Avalanche Sharks came out after this movie, so I don't know who ripped off who. I don't know. You guys decide. I'm not going to decide that. But anyways, the sheriff and the mayor argue with Mike and blah, blah, blah. But Mike says he's going to do what he's going to do. And then him and his boys like leave and they're like, yeah, we're going to go kill the shark. So the mayor tries to calm everybody down. And then he tells the sheriff to make sure Mike doesn't go out there and do anything stupid. And the sheriff is like, well, I doubt I can stop Mike. He's going to do what he's going to do. So the mayor's like, yeah, arrest him. And the sheriff's like, well, he hasn't done anything wrong. And the mayor's like, come up with a reason. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds about fucking right to me. Then we go to a hot tub with some buff dudes and bikini babes. Now we're getting somewhere. And then the ladies take their tops off. Nice. And one of the dudes gets out of the tub. He goes and grabs some beer and he spots the shark fin. And again, this movie does this weird crossfade thing, fade to black, while some of them are killed. I don't really know why, but basically we just get reaction shots and that's it. We don't really see too much of them, but basically all four of these people are picked off. Now we meet Link Anderson, I think his name was, and he's telling some woman to give Professor Hooper some papers or something because he's going away for a little bit. So again, there's another Jaws reference. Professor Hooper, like Hooper from Jaws, in case you didn't catch on to that. There's a guy named Hooper in Jaws. If you're listening to this podcast and you haven't watched Jaws, I don't really know what the fuck is wrong with you, seriously. Because remember, this is the year of Jaws. 2025 is the year of Jaws. I know it sounds like it's a year of a bunch of other shit, but let's just focus on it being the year of Jaws. And speaking of Jaws, we go back to the sheriff's house, and he's sitting at the table having dinner or something while his son is there, and his son's name is Bruce. Now you're like, Steve, what does that have to do with Jaws? Well, you fucking idiots. Bruce is the name of the shark. That's what they named the shark in Jaws. Not the characters, like behind the scenes, they called the animatronic shark Bruce. Anyways, these two argue back and forth. The sheriff's like, oh, you need to get a job, blah, blah, blah. And the son's like, I don't want to get a job, blah, 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 blah. I'm pretty sure this dude is like 30, supposed to be playing like what I assume is a teenager, because I don't think they're legal drinking age or whatever. And he's still at home, doesn't have a job, so I think that's what he's supposed to be doing. And then the sheriff even offers to get him a job at the police station, and Bruce is like, I wouldn't even pass the drug test. And the sheriff's like, you better not be serious. Blah. Oh my god. Anyways, after these two are done fighting, Bruce says that he's leaving and then he's gonna go hang out with his friend. He gets to the friend's house, knocks on the door, and he's got like a 6-pack of beer with him. And the dude's like, whoa, man, make sure my dad doesn't see that. And then they walk into the field where this friend's brother is hanging out by a fire. They kick him away from the fire, being like, yeah, we're gonna party here. And then they make a bunch of jokes about like masturbating into socks or whatever. And then Bruce's friend is like, oh, where did you get this beer from? And Bruce is like, yeah, I stole it from my dad, because he has like a beer fridge. And the friend is like, oh my god, what if your dad finds out? Whoa, who the fuck cares? Just drink it and shut up. And then they have like some of the most high school conversations ever. They're like, yeah, my dad, man, telling me to get a job and whatnot. And he's like, well, maybe you should get a job. Probably. And then they go back and forth like this. And then we learn that the sheriff and Bruce's mom died at some point. And this friend is like, yeah, your dad hasn't been the same since your mom died. And he's just trying to like justify his dad's behavior and whatnot. Which, I mean, fair enough. These are just some of the most like high school conversations, right? And then we hear the shark growling, and they're both just kind of drinking. And then Bruce leaves to go and take a piss. And then the shark ends up pulling him down, and he calls for his friend, and his friend's like, oh, what, you fall in your own piss? And then he gets dragged away by the shark. So he probably feels pretty bad now for making fun of Bruce. But after he sees him get dragged away, though, the friend goes running off. And then we cut to the next morning, and there's some police there, and they're questioning Bruce's friend and the brother and the dad. And we see Bruce's body, and he is headless in the snow. Now, the way they did this was they basically just had the actor, and I'll use the term actor very loosely here, but they just had him lay face down in the snow. And then they had like some sort of like clip art blood on top of him. I shouldn't say clip art because it actually didn't look that bad, but it's pretty obvious they just have something overlaid to show that he's headless. And we can see this guy breathing the whole time. Like, his back is just, like, moving up and down while he's breathing. But, I mean, I don't really expect a whole lot from this movie in that regard. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do that and try and keep my body perfectly still. Like, I'd be moving up and down too. So I don't blame this guy at all. But I'm just saying, it's pretty obvious he's not dead. I mean, in real life. I mean, in the movie, he's very much dead. He has no head. And the sheriff sees this, and he's pretty upset. Now his whole family is fucking dead. And he's feeling pretty guilty because they had an argument. And, like, the last thing Bruce said to him was, like, that he hates him. But then, like, one of the other officers is like, no, he didn't mean it, blah, 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 trying to comfort him. And then we see three people talking, and then one of them is convinced it's a snow shark, and then someone else is like, oh, no, I don't know. And then Chapman, the sheriff, goes and questions Bruce's friend, and he says he won't believe him, and then he apologizes for having some beers, and blah, blah, blah. He eventually gets to the point where he says, like, he saw a snow shark, and he takes a breath between, like, every word, like he's William Shatner having a fucking stroke or something. Chapman goes to leave, and someone asks where he's going, and he turns to the camera dramatically, and he's like, I have a shark to kill. Oh, someone's very angry. Now we're in a conference room, and we have three people. We have Cameron, who kind of looks like the Mulady guy. You know that meme? Mulady. He looks like that, except more douchey and more like, I'm from Southern America, sort of. You can just picture that. Just picture that in your head. There you go. Got it. And we have Anderson, who's the professor dude, and he's a cryptozoologist, I think. And then we have Wendy Gardner, who's an animal biologist, which I thought was a weird thing to distinguish at first, but then I'm like, I guess you could also have, like, plant biologist. So I guess her specialty is animals, just all animals in general. Nothing specific, so she's not a marine biologist. She's not a... Honestly, I don't know what other kind of biologists there are, but I guess just all animals. So she's an expert on everything. The mayor comes in and he meets everyone, and he tells them he doesn't care what happens to the shark as long as it ends up dead, or he just doesn't have to hear about it anymore. And then we also learn that the mayor covered up another attack that happened, and one of the survivors was labeled a crazy person. And then they just kind of go back and forth and finally wrap up this meeting. And then we go with Mike, the one who was from the town hall meeting. So we see him and a bunch of his cronies, and they're getting ready to go out and hunt the shark. And then Mike tries to warn everyone, like, that this thing is way more dangerous than they realize. And they're all just like, all right, boys, let's go hunting, America. So yeah, just not even listening to this dude at all. They're like, yeah, no, it'll be fine. I'm like, yeah, you're hunting something that you've never seen before, have no idea how it works, what it looks like, but yeah, no, I'm sure this will turn out just perfectly fine. Then we follow some dude in a Santa suit, and he comes into his kitchen, and there is a stuffed shark eating a Santa Claus on the table, and his wife comes in, Daphne, and they joke about it, and he's gonna go see some kids or whatever. Yeah, I'm sure this is gonna go well too. And then we go and follow the sheriff again, and he's loading his shotgun and then, like, looking at pictures of his family longingly. And then he gets a phone call from the mayor, and the mayor tells him that the team has assembled at a hotel, and they should be able to kill the creature, and then he should go with them to do this. The sheriff agrees, and then he goes and meets this team and kind of gives them a rundown on everything that's happened so far. And then he also tells them to keep this on the down low, even though everybody pretty much knows. Like, the town, I think most of the town is already kind of convinced that this is a snow shark, and even if the sheriff and mayor told everybody that, I kind of feel like a lot of these people just wouldn't believe them anyways. So then we go back to the Santa dude. We got to follow him again for a little bit. And then he goes to a garage, and all these mechanics are making fun of him, and apparently he owns this place. It's like some junkyard mechanic place, garage, whatever. And so after his employees give him a bunch of shit, he goes out into the junkyard, and he starts hearing noises like something's rattling around. And so he goes out to see what happens, and he gets attacked. This attack was pretty dope, though. So we get, like, a practical interior of a shark mouth, and we get some blood, and, you know, so we get a little bit more something here. I really appreciate the effort they put into this effect. And, I mean, we didn't follow this guy for that long, so I'm not really sure why he gets this really cool death. But, I mean, whatever. It still looked good. There was some blood in there. I was pretty happy. Now, when I say, like, practical effects, think along the lines of, like, a Polonia Brothers effects style, but maybe, like, a tiny bit better. Not a lot, just, like, a tiny bit. Little bits. We go back with Mike and all of his boys, and they start breaking off into groups to go hunt the shark. And then the Finn starts following some of them, and then Mike assures, like, one of his friends that, like, everything's gonna be fine. And this dude's like, no, my wife's gonna be angry that I'm even out here hunting this. And I'm like, well, why are you here then? If you're worried about that, why are you here? Just don't go out. Go back home. Why are you telling Mike about this? This isn't Mike's problem now. You're the idiot for coming out here with him. I highly doubt he forced you to. So they start motivating each other to, like, go and find this thing and kill it. And then we follow a couple of other hunters talking nonsense, and then one by one they're kind of picked off without the other person knowing. Mike hears this. They hear a couple of shots, and then him and his friend are just like, well, everyone's dead. I'm like, so you heard a few shots, and unless they can see all of them and they just don't show us, but he just, somehow both of them know that everybody's dead now. And then Mike says, like, oh, I need to find my brother, because I guess his brother was also out here hunting with them. And so they go, they find the body, and the friend's like, well, there you go, he's dead. Are you happy now? The friend's like, hey, Mike, like, it's time to go. So he dies, just spraying blood all over Mike, and then the shark fin ends up swimming away. And again, so far this is all practical. We get, like, I think a couple of maybe quick CGI shots here and there, but they're so fast and brief that you barely even notice that they are. I actually thought they used that, like, pretty sparingly. Granted, they also probably didn't have the know-how or money to do more than what they did. But again, like, this is actually a pretty good use of it so far. We go back with the sheriff and his 3 amigos, and he's brought them to his house so they can set up equipment and whatnot. And then we get, like, a little comedic scene of the hunter, like, bringing all his weapons out. So he's got, like, a bunch of guns and knives, and he has a crossbow. And the professor asks, like, oh, you're going to kill a shark with a crossbow? And he's like, yeah, it'd be pretty badass to kill a shark with a crossbow. Spoiler alert, he does not kill the shark with a crossbow, because he is not badass. He is kind of a douche. And he's the one who really wants to just go out there, hunt it, kill it, and then not think twice about it. But the professor and Wendy are like, no, we need to observe this creature's habits to, like, formulate a plan. And I'm like, yeah, that actually makes sense. But again, Cameron the hunter is just like, no, we got to go kill it now, America. And then the 3 of them, this is where they find out that the sheriff's kid had just died. And so, like, they have some heartfelt conversations, and then they argue a little bit more. And then they finally decide to head out into the woods. And then somehow, when they're setting stuff up, they're just convinced that the risk is minimal because they're just setting up cameras and taking samples. I don't really know why the risk should be minimal here, but for some reason it is. And then Cameron says to the sheriff, like, he's real quiet. And the sheriff says, like, nothing worth saying. Like, okay then, good for you. And the Cameron also goes to try and, like, nag on Wendy. Like, he's trying to hit on her by, like, insulting her and just being an overall douchebag. It doesn't go well. So the professor asks him for his help to set up this camera. They get the camera set up, get their samples, and decide to call it a day. So it took them all of 5 minutes to get all of this done. And then Santa's wife, it gets visited by a police officer to let her know that, like, they're doing everything they can and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, basically she ain't getting that candy cane dick no more. But again, the officer's not saying it's like a snow shark. And she's like, everybody knows what it is. Like, just shut the fuck up about this and just, you know, say it already. And then we go to a bar that basically looks like it's inside somebody's unfinished garage or something. And then Mike comes in, and Daphne, Santa's wife, is there. And he sits next to her, and they start arguing, and then, like, she cries. And then Mike yells, like, he needs time to have a drink, because she's like, oh, you should be out there killing it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, I need to have a drink, because everybody I know just died. Which, I mean, in Mike's defense, pretty fucking fair, I would say. I think he deserves to have a beer or 2. And before Daphne leaves, she makes Mike promise to kill this shark, even if it's the last thing he does. And then there is an eye patch dude at the bar saying it feels like winter never ends around here, being super dramatic. And then some people invite Mike over to their table, and they drink. They talk about the shark, obviously. And then Mike defends the fact that there is a shark out there, because these guys are like, oh, no, we just think you're crazy, blah, blah, blah. But then Eye Patch Dude chimes in and says that he believes him. And now Eye Patch Dude is actually Professor Hoffman from the beginning of the movie, who died supposedly died 12 years ago. But yeah, he didn't die, but he has been pretending to be dead, I guess. And he says that he thought the world would be better off not knowing what the creature was. Because he's like, oh yeah, I used to be like this man of science and I thought it would be important for people to know. But then after that, I was like, nope. I don't know. That is a bunch of nonsense if I've ever heard it. It makes no goddamn sense. I mean, I can understand like you're scared and whatnot, but not letting people know what it is doesn't make any sense. And he goes on about how this shark tortures him and haunts his dreams, and he believes it's the devil himself. And then Mike chimes in and is like, this demon has no soul. He keeps me alive to feed on pain. And then Hoffman says that he's in. So I guess these two are like, yeah, let's work together. So they head out to go and kill the shark. They go, I'm assuming, back to Mike's place, and they start loading their weapons, sharpening knives, and drinking beer. And then Hoffman asks Mike if he ever wonders what happens after the shark is dead, because Hoffman thinks that there's nothing left to fight for. Well, just wait for 2025. There'll be plenty to fight for. Then we montage them getting drunk and laughing until Mike passes out, and then Hoffman even puts his coat on Mike after he passes out, keep him all nice and comfy. That's so nice. And the next morning, Anderson is checking for pictures on his laptop to see if the camera caught anything, and then Cameron comes in and asks if he found anything, and then Anderson's like, yep, there's nothing on the camera, there's not even any deer or whatever. So Cameron's like, listen, the only way to find this thing is to just go out there and find it. But again, Anderson's like, no, we got to set up the camera somewhere else, and we got to learn its habits, and blah, blah, blah. And then Wendy comes in, and Cameron calls her the wrong name. Again, trying to be like a douchebag who is trying to nag her, which I guess in 2011, this was probably pretty popular. So he thinks he's doing something right. He's not. And Wendy talks about some of the tests that she did, and she didn't find anything weird. So it's not like an alien shark or something like that. And then Cameron's like, well, that means it could be killed then. Yep, I guess that is a pretty fair assumption, Cameron. Thank you for chiming in. And so they all argue for a little bit, and then they all finally agree to go out and kill it. And Anderson's like, give me a gun. I want a gun to go and kill this thing and help. Wendy doesn't want a gun. She doesn't want a weapon. She's like, I'm just going to, stay here and do what I was here to do and not kill a shark. Fine, whatever. You want to stand there while they kill the shark and just look at it? Go for it. If you're not even going to participate in killing it, why are you even there? Wait for it to be dead, and then you can go and do tests and whatnot. Otherwise, why are you here? What are you doing? So they go to the woods, and Mike and Hoffman are already in the woods hunting this thing as well. So then the sheriff and the three amigos, they see this shark fin circling them, and Wendy freaks out saying she shouldn't have come out. No shit. And she starts to back away, and the shark grabs her, and we just see her kind of splattered in blood and whatnot. Don't really see a whole lot else other than that. And then the shark comes back and eats Cameron, and we get a mix of CGI, practical, and all of that. Just the way this was done was actually probably one of the better kills so far. Pretty enjoyable. We kind of see him like half in the shark's mouth too. But they never linger on the practical effect for too long, but kind of just long enough that we get an idea of what it is and we can kind of appreciate it for what it is. And like almost immediately after this, Mike and Hoffman come up behind Anderson and the sheriff and ask if everything's okay because they heard some shots. And it's like, well, nope. I mean, considering how fast you just got here, you had to have seen or heard the screams. I mean, like, come on. But anyways, they all agree to work together and decide to come up with a plan. Now, Hoffman believes that it's attracted to heat. So Mike asks, like, how do they create heat to draw it in? And Hoffman is like, we make a fire. Like, fucking duh. Like, oh, how do we make heat? I guess Mike isn't too fucking bright, but... So basically, the plan is to create a fire that will distract the shark and kind of hide their body heat while they go and attack it. So they pour a bunch of gasoline, and as Hoffman is about to light the fire, this shark comes up and bites his arm off. And we get more practical shark here, which is pretty great. And then the plan changes to just staying alive. They're like, okay, we're going to abandon this plan, and now we're just going to try and stay alive. Because apparently nobody else has a lighter to start this fire, I guess. And then Mike pulls out a grenade, and he tells the other two to leave, and that he's the one that the shark is after. So I guess he thinks that this is personal because he killed the other shark. It's like Jaws 4. And so the shark just ends up biting Mike in half. So he's just sitting in the snow with what's left of him, holding the grenade and laughing and crying. And then the sheriff goes to shoot him to like put him out of his misery. And then Anderson stops him saying like, no, listen, just leave him alive. Our best chance is to leave him and then run away. I'm like, I get it, but also really fucking shitty. Really shitty of you to do. But that's exactly what they do. They just start running away. And then the shark ends up coming to Mike. And we get like a full view of this shark. And it looks like a Polonia shark. It looks like the shark from Land Shark. So that's like the type of practical effects we're dealing with here. But again, I liked it. But it was like, I guess like a miniature version that they just composited on, which is fine. It looked great. I was very happy with it. Now, when I say great, like it's great within reason. And so the shark bites Mike just as he pulls the pin out of the grenade, and he ends up blowing himself and the shark up to smithereens. So the sheriff looks and he's like, oh, great, the shark's dead. And then he radios in what happened, so they start heading back. And then Anderson says, like, they need to get a team down there to investigate the shark. And the sheriff is like, I don't really care about that. I'm just glad it's dead. Let's go home. And as they're leaving, they hear something. And then we see 3 more shark fins headed their way. And then it cuts to black. Now, I think these shark fins were probably CGI here. But again, not that big of a deal. But yeah, after we fade to black, we then follow Daphne, Santa's wife, and she's just leaving a wreath on her husband's grave, like crying. And then we see a shark fin start to follow her in the graveyard, and then she screams, it freeze frames and zooms in on her, and then we start rolling credits. And then we just get this like wicked rock song playing in the end, like, she's gonna eat you alive. Yeah, but that's the end of the movie. That was all of it. Poster expectations, I mean, honestly, this is pretty much exactly what I expected. I was hoping for maybe some more practical shots of the shark, because there were quite a few, but we didn't linger on some of them quite long enough. But again, I always feel like I'm always asking for more practical shots, and we just never get it. That being said, I loved what they did with the practical effects in this movie. Some of them were pretty ambitious for a small movie, especially in 2011, right? Like, this was a while ago, so they didn't have access to a lot of the like technology and whatnot that we do today. And again, the CG was used pretty sparingly, and when they did use it, I thought like they actually used it appropriately. Like, it seems like they actually had a good understanding of what they were capable of and what they were not capable of. The acting is kind of what you'd expect from a low-budget movie. I mean, most of these people are probably friends and family who did this as a favor. Granted, some of them might be people who are pursuing acting. That's fine. But I imagine that there's quite a few people in here that are just kind of from the town that they were filming in or whatever. But I think I'm going to actually agree with Letterboxd on this. I'm going to go for 2.5 stars. It had practical effects. It feels like they had fun making this movie, and that always kind of translates on screen a little bit. So, yeah, I had a pretty good time with this one, you know? It's on YouTube if you want to check it out. I highly recommend it. Again, it's not going to be the most amazing thing you've ever seen, but I was pretty goddamn entertained by it, so I enjoyed it. But that is it for Snow Shark, Ancient Snow Beast from 2011. Don't forget, you can follow me on all of the social medias. That's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Slasher, all at Bucket of Chum Podcast. And if you want to support the podcast, patreon.com/Bucket of Chum. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe, do all of those things. And I'll see you guys next time for even more Bucket of Chum.